I am going to post this video. I'm going to post this meeting into either the third or fourth quarter driver ed classroom, whichever class your student's in. So it is going to be accessible in there if you have anything you want to refer back to. But with that said, it is 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks everybody for coming in and joining us tonight for the driver ed meeting. This is a great way for us to get everything taken care of, and then you still don't have to worry about being around anybody that might cough on you and give you COVID. So with that said, I'm going to kind of move on right into the first part of what we need to talk about, which is the classroom info. Third quarter kids are already in the classroom right now. They've already gotten their materials for everything. Fourth quarter kids, certain materials they will get when they come into the class. But just so you know this, maybe as a carrot to dangle over your kids' heads and whatnot, we have a pretty intense curriculum. We have to cover 18 chapters in 9 weeks. Within those 9 weeks, we have days that we miss because holidays. We have days we miss because of student in-services, and we have days that are conflicts because of, COVID. So we cover a lot and we go in a lot of detail on a lot of things, but we cover it quickly, and we have to get through this so that way we can prepare your student and give your student and your child as much information as possible so they can be as mentally prepared for the physical parts that Mr. Grauer is going to talk about. The next bullet point you'll see there is the A or B incentive. What that incentive is that if your child gets an A or a B in the classroom, they are eligible for the waiver. That waiver, I'll just pull that out here right now, looks something like this. Okay. This is just an actual paper copy of it, but it looks something like this. What this waiver is a testing form that we use in Behind the Wheel that if we believe your student is capable and ready, and usually we do because otherwise we wouldn't pass them through the driving portion, they are eligible to get that waiver, and then they do not have to drive at the DMV, usually. I say that because there are times where the DMV will audit birthdays, and it's not a check on your child as much as it's a check on Mr. Grauer and myself to make sure that we are not just handing out waivers willy-nilly and just not even thinking twice about it. So that's that A or B incentive. That third bullet point on there says college visit project. You can basically ignore that. Those that might have had kids that have gone through the system before, you're probably familiar with that project from previous teachers and previous regimes, which probably isn't the right word for that. But because of us dealing with COVID and everything right now, that college visit project is a real pain for us to try to fit in. So that has been thrown to the wayside for right now. So we're focused on getting all the other information in and dealt with. The next couple of bullet points here, they also tie into the right-hand side of your screen. So we'll jump right into that. So attendance. Attendance is a must. The state of Illinois requires, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I believe it requires 30 hours of classroom time. We cover that 30 hours in 5 days a week of 40-minute class periods. So we end up just over that 30-hour requirement by about 2 days. So that's why it says on there that 3 missed days results in the removal of your child from that class. So as your 3 days happens, for whatever reason other than COVID, and I'll explain COVID, your child is removed from the class period and they have to retake it. So I know that kind of stinks. So, your child, God forbid, breaks your arm, a funeral comes up in your family, something like that happens. In the eyes of Jesse White and the Secretary of State of Illinois, that is not a good enough reason to miss more than what would get you to that minimum amount of time. And that is a very sloppy way to say that, so I apologize for that. But that is their stance. With that said, there is a COVID exemption on that. That COVID exemption is this. So long as your child is able to submit the work for that day that is assigned to them, they will count as them being there that day in person. So it is a big, big deal, starting tomorrow especially, that your child's assignment is turned in on time. Which parents, if your child is in the third quarter driver ed class, I will just say this right now, Chapter 3 study guide, which I want to say is like page 22 or 23 in their driver ed Bible, which looks a little something like this. Okay, so it says student handbook, looks a little something like this. That's due tomorrow. So they need to make sure they do that assignment. That's due tomorrow. They can submit that into the Google Classroom. They take a picture. They take a PDF scan, but they take a picture. They take that picture and they submit that into the Google Classroom via their phone, and they're good to go. But just let them know, or make sure they know that that is due tomorrow. With that said, that accounts are remote Wednesdays as well. They're most of the time going to get an assignment on these remote Wednesdays that they have. They have to get that assignment done, completed, and turned in on time for me to count that towards their attendance. So if they turn that in late, or they don't turn it at all, it counts as a missed day, and it goes towards that 3-day that 3-day tally that I keep track of. So if there are questions on that, please type them in the chat. But I hope I did a pretty decent job explaining that one. The failed classroom grade, this is always a possibility that it happens, whether it's for attendance or it's because you pretty much basically somebody didn't turn things in. They have to retake the class before they can take behind the wheel. So they have to retake the class. This could be during fourth quarter. This could possibly not be until first quarter of next fall. It could possibly not be until second and third quarter of the next year. It just all depends on not only how badly you want your child to get back in the class, but also how badly your child wants to get back in the class, and as well as them then getting a hold and talking to Mr. Carter. So there's a lot of moving parts that take place there.
Can I add to that, please?
Absolutely.
So along with that, then it's also classroom availability. So we will do our best to put a student who fails third quarter in fourth quarter, as long as there's room in the classroom. And because we're trying to keep students social distance the best we can, if it exceeds a specific number or space in the classroom and there isn't room for them physically, then they will have to wait until next fall to take that class again.
Yes, perfect. That I probably would have forgot to say that. So that's the perfect way to summarize that right there. So yeah, basically tell your kids turn their stuff in, please. If they have a problem with getting something submitted, the best way to get a hold of me is email. I'm pretty quick on responding on that. I probably respond to it on weekends when I really shouldn't, and I should probably make a professional personal barrier. But I know there's things that kids can freak out about sometimes, so I like to respond to it if it's something that they're really you can sense the urgency in that email and in that message. So if they have a problem, have them reach out to me via email, and I will get back to them. I'll just tell them, email it directly to me, and I'll still count it. As long as I can see it and as long as I can find it, it has been submitted. So that last little tidbit over there, which is permit.
Let me add one more thing real quick, Mr. Leak. I'm sorry. So parents, please be careful as you're scheduling orthodontics appointments. It seems like kids will have an ortho appointment in the morning and have driver's ed in the morning and miss class. Please make sure you're scheduling those. If they had class in the morning, you schedule it in the afternoon or whatever. But just be careful with scheduling of any appointments, because excused or unexcused, like Mr. Leak said, it will count as an absence from class.
Yes, thank you. I probably should have mentioned the doctor's appointments part when I said the whole attendance thing. The English teachers aren't going to like this, but right now driver ed's more important than English. So there you go. But anyway, the last little part there, that last bullet point, That kind of ties us into our next slide. Permits, and I'll explain that in a second, but in order for your student to receive their permit, they have to be 15 years old and enrolled in the class. So because your child is going to be 15 at some point this semester, if they're not already 15, and they are in third or fourth quarter, they are going to be getting their permits at some point once they turn 15. When that happens, they get GDL booklets, which is basically just lessons and hours tracking for you guys. It gives sample lessons that you can use at home with as parents in case you're like, well, I don't know what I want to practice with them. They can help kind of kick those wheels rolling and get that hamster spinning in that wheel in your brain for ideas. So moving on to, oh, that's the wrong computer screen. All right. This is where I had to make adjustments beforehand. Permit procedures. We here at GCMS, we jump right into the core material that we cover, which is through a different textbook from the Illinois Rules of the Road booklet. So I give them time to study that because they're studying it on their own when it comes to the permit test. You'll see those dates over there on the left-hand side of the screen. We were going to do our test for third quarter next week on Friday, and then the COVID bug hit us, so I've moved that right now to January 25th-ish. That could be January 26th. It could be January 25th. I prefer to do it sooner, but it's going to be roughly in that window. I say roughly in that window because before we can even test, we have to go online to the Illinois State website. We have to plug in information, and they've got to fill that all in, and then we can get into the test. And I have to be there, or I have to be in the immediate vicinity of them with that test being administered. So right now, so long as everything works according to plan, we're going to be testing at that date. You'll notice that the fourth quarter kids, they are about a week after that because they don't have the availability to ask questions to me daily in person like the third quarter kids do right now. I gave them a little bit of extra time. The vision test, with that permit testing, I'll add, please make sure your child knows their address, their city or their zip code, because Gibson City and Melvin and Sibley and Foosland do not all have the same zip codes. I am barely familiar enough with Gibson City's zip code because I am terrible at remembering numbers. So I am not going to know off the top of my head Sibley or Melvin's or Foosland's zip code. So please make sure they know their address because they're going to have to know that. Make sure they know their zip code. And hopefully they roughly know their hair and eye color, but we'll make do on that day if we need to. So please just make sure they know that when we come to that point. Vision testing. I administer the vision test. I go up to the DMV here in Gibson City. They give me their handy dandy 1960 era vision equipment that I'm amazed still works, but it does. So, and then I administer the vision tests. They need to, if they wear glasses, they wear contacts, they need to make sure they wear those that day. So that way they can see and meet the minimum requirement that the state has. So long as they meet the minimum requirement and they see the blinking lights on this side of the face when they're supposed to, they're good to go. We have no problems. If for some reason there is an issue that arises, and every once in a while this does happen, then we have to take some extra steps, which if your child happens to be one of those individuals, I will be in communication with you as to what we have to do. But usually the only restriction we see on that in regards to permits is that the permit is truly only valid during daylight hours. That's usually the most common restriction that we see. But like I said, if there is an issue or a concern, I will be in communication with you and relaying to you what the state tells me and everything, so that way we can work through any of those issues that might arise. So vision tests are also hopefully going to be the week of the 25th-ish. And that's going to kind of include students hopefully returning on time then via our COVID protocols and everything like that. if for some reason, I will say this, if for some reason your student comes down with COVID over while we're not in session and is not able to come back in until, I don't know, the first week of February, and I no longer have that vision equipment because that equipment does have to go to some other schools at some point in time, I will have to send you up there in order to get do the test with them, which they'll probably waive because nobody wants to stick their head in there with some things. But that's the vision test. Permit testing, third quarter parents. I know some of you have students that are in the like November, December birthday range. We should have permit testing done, vision testing done, and I should be able to acquire the permits and get them back to you, or I should say your child, with it or within the time frame that they will have had it for 9 months, and then they will turn 16. So there should hopefully, knock on wood right now, and everybody, hopefully you just did that so we don't jinx ourselves. We are going to be at that window where I can get it to those kids that might be the older kids, that they'll have it for 9 months and then they'll turn 16 and they'll be okay. So hopefully we will not have anybody that is 16 has to wait a week or two and then can go in to get their license. Once the testing's completed, this is the last little bit for me here with this. It costs $20 to get an instruction permit for the state of Illinois. They will take a check, which, as it says there, payable to Illinois Secretary of State, or they take cash because, you know, cash is king. They prefer that I take the permit up there and I take the method of payment up there. This way, it limits the amount of people that they are exposed to and the amount of people that are either in the facility at one time or the amount of people that are waiting outside. So, and then that way, if I'm the one that takes it up there, you're not surprised with the whole, oh, well, we need this form of identification and this form of identification and this form of identification. In the 1 year that I was just at the middle school, they apparently changed that on me from when I was doing this at my old school district and started asking people for proof of this, this, and this. And I had to reverse course and do that. So I am, unless there is other circumstances, and again, I will talk to you and your child about that. Unless there's other circumstances that pop up, I will have your child bring that money to me along with that permit application, and I'll get that to you. I did just see a question pop up, so before I move on and turn this over to Mr. Grauer, that 20 is due on the 25th. So it's not truly due on the 25th. It's not going to really be due until the point where I am going to be eligible to take your child's permit up there, your permit application up there to get their permit. So say your child's already 15. If you wanted to bring in that money on the 25th, that's great. If you wanted to wait until we had the testing done and I sent home their application for you to double check, because believe it or not, your child's probably going to screw something up on that white sheet of paper and they're going to say that it's totally accurate. And then me not knowing any better is going to say, okay, here you go. They're going to take that home for you to review and double check to make sure that all that information is accurate, and then bring that back to me, because there's some things that have to get signed by yourself and me. I would just have them bring the $20 at that point in time. So I would say sometime that week of January 25th, that $20 will be good to have, but it's not going to have to be right at that point in time. So hopefully that answered that. And then without any further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Steve Grauer is going to hop on here and knock this out.
Yeah, I don't know who that man, myth, legend is, but it's not me. So my responsibility, for the most part, since Mr. Lee covered all the stuff with the classroom, is setting the behind-the-wheel schedule and doing a good portion of the behind-the-wheel itself. Mr. Leak does as well, but his main responsibility for us, which is a big responsibility, is dealing with the classroom, the permits, etc. So I've got the easy part. When we schedule it, we are looking oldest to youngest that have already been enrolled or have been in class. So if your child hasn't been in class and somebody older than them or younger than them is in, there are reasons before it. I'm not paying favorites. Nobody's paid me off yet. I say yet. Never mind. I don't want any money. But it also depends on class, their class schedule. If they have a conflict, we only take them out of study hall and PE. And if they don't have a study hall, which is great, then it leaves us with, while they're in PE or advisory. In advisory, we can only have 2 for that whole quarter or more, just because of the short time. So if there's a schedule conflict and they're not able to get in right away, we are looking oldest to youngest. I've got a list that I put together. But we try our best to get the kids in there that have had their permit the longest as soon as possible. When they're actually enrolled in the class, 99% of the time, they're going to be done with the classroom before they start behind the wheel. Every once in a while, we pull a kid one of the kids who is currently in the class, but they'll be halfway, 3/4 of the way through the class, and we need someone and their schedule fits. But again, most of the time, they're already done with it. The assignment part, that Bible that Mr. Leake talks about, in the back half of it is the behind the wheel section. So when they're done with the classroom, they need to hold on to that. So if they get done in 4th quarter, your student gets done 4th quarter, they need that next year. They need it to do behind the wheel, because if it's gone, now we have an issue because there's stuff that they need from that. So make sure they hold on to it, put it in a safe place, wherever that may be. Maybe not in their room. I had my own teenage boys, their room, it's not a good idea. But hold on to it, because the back half, there's questions that are very similar, set up the way that they are for the classroom. But when we meet, we go over those questions, and it leads up to what we cover as far as in the car itself. So make sure, if you need to keep bugging them, hey, hold on to this, put it somewhere safe, put it with your backpack you're going to use next year, etc. Hopefully we're able to get started on the 3rd quarter kids come April. We can get them in the schedule. Obviously, when we have weeks off like we do right now, it makes it tougher to do the driving portion. Not having Wednesdays, we can drive on those, but you have to bring your student to the school for us to do that. So it takes a little longer this year. We are doing our best. We're driving normal times as well as outside of normal school hours to try and fill that need so people can get their license when they're 16. Because as a parent, I really loved it, because now I don't have to drive them around anymore, and they can drive their siblings around. So we will do what we can and get them in as soon as possible. Reasons for removal. Once they are actually in and driving with one of us, you can see the 3 reasons. The poor grades, multiple D's or F. If they can't get those up within a couple weeks, we will set them aside, because grades are more important. Some students may not agree with that, but their grades come before they're getting their behind the wheel done. And we have, obviously, our admin will back us up. Every parent I've talked to has agreed with us. It just takes priority. Attendance, they need to be there when we're supposed to drive. We usually say, if you miss 3 days, we got to move on, because their partner now can't drive either. And it's really tough to find a sub for them, because we have to get a hold of parents and so forth. We can't just grab someone off the street and throw them in the car with us. So they need to be there. And then the work we were just talking about, the questions, they need to have those done when it's time for us to meet. If they're continually not getting it done, then to me, they're not taking it seriously enough, and there's somebody else that really wants their driver's license. And some kids, honestly, they don't want their license right away, and we're fine with that. We have had a couple kids in the last year saying, I don't want my license until I'm 18. I'm not going to force you to drive when there's other kids behind you that really want it. As you as a parent come in and say, I want my kid to have a license, then we have to have that discussion as well. COVID issues, remote learning versus stay at home. Right now we're starting the remote learning, as everybody's aware. We can still drive. We have to set up times around this kid's schedule, which again is tough, especially with the current schedule we have, which is great that we expanded it. But it hampers getting, again, they have to get a drive there, a ride there, and a ride back. Okay, so that's somebody that's available to get them to the school and back. But if we can schedule that, we will, to try and get them done. Stay-at-home order, they can't be at the school. we can't be with them. There is no driving. I don't foresee that happening, but if it were. So if we can schedule, if we get to the point where we're driving with your student, with your kid, and we have a remote learning situation, we can still drive with them if we can schedule it. Other little things with when your student gets their permit, they have to do 50 hours with you, 10 of which are at night. We only get 6. That's not very much, considering you're teaching them a lot and you know what you're doing with driving, but Mr. Leak and I, we know how to really in detail show them how to do things. Again, it's not that you don't know what you're doing. I trust all the parents that are out there, but we only get 6 hours. So what we try and do is, with the communication in the back of that book, is we'll show them what we've done. They mark it off, and they're supposed to show you, once we've checked it off, hey, mom and dad, here's what we've done. Can we work on this at home? Because if they don't feel comfortable parallel parking, we cover parallel parking. Maybe they want to work on it. If they don't feel comfortable with normal parking, maybe they'll say, hey, can we go work on this? Because again, we can only do those maneuvers so many times in those 6 hours. So we really want that communication. And if you want to get a hold of us through email or Remind, awesome. But the book that Mr. Leak was just holding up there in the back, it has a place. Those are our check marks. We go through all this stuff. There's 10 plus lessons. And at the bottom, it shows a place for you to sign. That tells us that they're showing you what we're doing. Because driving around is fantastic. But as you know, there's all these little things that we've been doing for years as drivers that new drivers have no experience at. So being able to work between us, Mr. Leak and I, and you as parents is very important. Again,
and with that,
for you versus 6 for us. Go ahead, Mr.
With
Driver.
that, parents, I like to kick in at this point too that for years and years, your kids have never really paid attention to your driving skills, but now that they're in driver's ed, they will. So don't be surprised if they maybe start calling you out on any poor driving habits you may have, as far as driving with one hand or speeding or on your phone or any other distracted driving things. Your kids may be calling you out on that now. But you're also modeling a behavior for them that as then they get behind the wheel with Mr. Leak or Mr. Grauer, that they're going to have to correct in order to make sure that they can pass them in the class. So just be careful of your own personal driving habits when you're with your kids now. So
it said somebody had raised their hand. Oh, go for it.
Can the 50 hours be logged by like an older sibling that's an adult or a grandparent as well, or is it just the parent? I might have missed that.
Somebody that is 21 or over.
Oh, 21. Okay.
Yep. Other than that, that's the only people they're supposed to drive with if they're in the passenger seat, according to the state law.
Okay.
I will add, hopefully this isn't the case, but I did deal with this at my old school district. With a permit, a student is not a valid designated driver. I hope this doesn't come up, but I did have students at my old district say, well, I've had to do this for my parents. So for your sake and for your child's sake, please don't put them at that situation, because what happens then is if, say, they were to be pulled over in that situation, they're seen as not having any valid driving materials, no driver's license, no permit, nada. And now that puts them automatically at the point where they're not able to get their license until they're 18 at the earliest. So just throwing that out there. So hopefully that doesn't come up, but I figured I might as well throw that little tidbit in there.
Did you want me to cover any of this stuff here, Mr. Lee?
Well, I think we kind of hit on it already with the logging of the hours and the 50 hours. Did you mention that 10 of those hours are supposed to be at night?
Yeah,
okay.
Which is really easy right now. This is the best time. And then driving in the snow may be a little intimidating when you have a 15-year-old, but it's very important for them to do it. We will do it too. If it's snowing and we're at school, we're going to drive with them. But it's really nice to have that. They shouldn't ever drive in the snow by themselves for the first time because they have no idea what to do. So if you can and you feel comfortable, take them out if it does snow and help them out with that. But there is a page in the handbook that does have a spot for the logging the hours. You can just keep it in there, or you can rip it out and put it on your fridge if that helps.
Third hour parents, that GDL booklet that was a few slides ago, that has like 3 pages worth of hours logged for you to use. I think our driver ed Bible, as I like to call it, only has, I think, a page like front and back. So, and I know 50 hours can seem kind of intimidating. I know my parents thought they would never accomplish it because I was the first group of people that in the state of Illinois had to get 50 hours. I think I had 50 hours knocked out in 3 months. So, and don't think that, I have to take long trips. If your child drives to school every single day and it's 5 minutes to school and 5 minutes home, you can literally just log that as a week's worth of driving to and from school. Because what's 5 times 10? 50? I think that's right. So, Mr. Riley would love me right now. So, that's almost an hour of time right there. So it can be as simple as just letting those small time frames add up. Homework assignments we hit on. Behind the wheel lessons, signatures we kind of hit on. You'll notice there it says turned into the behind the wheel instructor to get plugged into the system. This is kind of our way of making sure that they were communicating with you. Basically, it's, look, you have to turn this into us and show that your parents have seen this lesson so I can put you in ISB, because I got to put you in ISB, which then syncs up with the Secretary of State system. So it's kind of our just double check to make sure they're communicating with you and all that jazz. I don't think. Mr. Grauer, can you think of anything else to add on top of that?
Oh, I'm sure I will later, but no, we're good I can't think of anything now.
Hey, that's usually what happens. So with that said, because I can't think of anything else and we're already past my minimum 20-minute goal that I was hoping for, is there any questions that anybody has? You can raise your hand, speak up, or you can type them in the chat. Yes, I see a hand raised right now.
So with the new COVID schedule, are they logging in on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all 5 days?
Okay, good question. So my third quarter parents, Wednesday is still considered a remote Wednesday day. So that day, they are going to, I have to determine how the schedule works out. I think I already kind of told them today that they can expect to have a Unit 1 test that day. But lucky them, they're at home. Hopefully they remember to take their booklets and everything with them. So I told them this is going to ultimately be an open note, open book test. So, because I can't validate that they didn't use it anyway in the first place. So Wednesday is just going to be a day where they're going to have an assignment, get that done. But tomorrow, what's Tuesday? The 19th, the 21st, and the 22nd, those are going to be normal class days. I think that's like 1:30 or 1:30 to 2:10, I think is roughly what that time frame is off the top of my head without pulling the sheet up that Mr. Gerard shared with us. So yes, they will need to be tuned in. If they have technical issues, internet slow, they need, I really prefer for them to communicate that with me. Typically I'll tell them just keep the camera shut off, and that kind of helps reduce the amount of bandwidth they have to use. So those 4 days, they'll have to be in there. So thank you. That's a good question.
And Monday is still a holiday, so we have no classes on Monday, so there's no driver's ed Monday either.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Typically, we won't have anything that's due on holidays in the classroom, but they do need to be prepared for that next day that something is going to be due. So just so you are aware, they're pretty much going to have something fairly frequently for me to complete in the classroom, just because of how our work schedule works out. Any other questions, whether it's the chat or I think there's a raise hand button. Yeah, there's a raise hand button. Anything else? Somebody wants to join the call. If there's not any more questions, This was recorded. I am going to, as soon as this like actually sends the copy of the recording to me, it's going to get posted into your students' Google Classroom, whether it's third or fourth quarter. And then it's probably not going to be on the social media tonight just because I don't have access to it and I don't really know how to get it to it. But I am going to get it to somebody that does have the ability to do that. And it's going to be posted up into the Google Classroom, or not the Google Classroom, like the school social media sites and stuff like that within 24 hours. I did see a hand raise. Kyle, was that you?
Yeah, but he accidentally did it.
Ooh.
Yes, but it was totally an accident.
Oh, okay. Okay, that happens then.
I did have one other thing with your students being in third and fourth quarter. There is a good chance that a number of them might need to drive this summer. Just again, scheduling the way it's gone this year is much different this summer. And so we will send out emails to ask you guys. Obviously, we're not going to schedule without permission of when they can get there and stuff. But just note that that's probably going to happen. And we will, Mr. Leak and I will do our best to try and get people done so they're not missing to getting their license when they're 16. And then others will have to go next year, first quarter. That's usually how it works with fourth quarter classroom kids. So don't be shocked if they aren't able to drive until the end of the school year.
Yeah. Once we get the go ahead from admin, we will start to communicate that with you and your children and let them know that, hey, this is now a possibility for us. And we'll continue with the age appropriateness of that and do as much. We'll be as flexible as possible. We understand it's the summer and we understand it's not very common that we do drive in the summer, but we are still going to try to be cranking people out as quickly as possible. So we'll work with you, work with us, we'll work with you, we'll get it done. And hopefully be on our merry way to a much happier 2021 than 2020. Yes. Any?
That since Tyler's, he'll be 18 in November. So should I assume that he'll go first, or is he still going to be moved kind of back and wiggled in somewhere else? He's in no rush, and I'm in no rush.
Yes. I tell you what, Jennifer, we'll we can have a conversation like separately,
Okay.
if you'd like, just because there's some details and whatnot I'd like to share with you. And I'll probably have Mr. Grauer stick around for that part as well. Just so that, because he has some of the information as well that goes along with that, but we can discuss that and we'll figure it out and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. So if you wanted to stick around while when everybody else kind of logs out, we can discuss that and we'll be okay from there. So
Yep, sounds good.
with that said, everybody else, thank you for tuning in. I've taken 37 minutes of your life that you'll never get back. This is going to get posted very shortly within hopefully the next hour. So thank you for tuning in. Any other questions, you can shoot me an email at leak.colton@gcmsk12.org. I probably screwed that email up somehow.
You got it right.
And that's the best way to get a hold of me. I am terrible at answering phones at school, just telling you. So thank you for tuning in. You can go ahead and start to log out. Any questions, get a hold of me. I will answer them as quickly and as best I can. And this will get posted soon. Thank you, HA. I'm not going to screw your name up here for everybody to laugh at. So.